us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, building a liberty machine. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Don't procrastinate. I mean, it's going to sneak up on you. I know it's only the 6th, but there's only 25 days left in the year, right? Much less until Christmas. So, hey, I want to welcome back to the program. We've got Senator Brian King with us once again from District 5. Brian, it's always great to have you on, sir.
Hey, good to be on, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Wanted to have you on because I wanted you to be able to set the record straight, like you do many times. But, I mean, the fact that you're not going to be at the Capitol next session is it really means, I believe, that the people are going to be losing a consistent voice of dissent at stating the obvious, not, getting through the spin, but stating the obvious of what really goes on in Little Rock. And, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for doing that for as many years as you've been doing it, because you've exposed a whole lot.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. And, I mean, it's been an honor to serve the 12 years, and there's been times, and unfortunately, a lot more, as I look back, a lot more of the dissension, things that went off rails, things that went off from what we think of as conservative, in reality happened when Republicans took over in 2013. And you had expanded Medicaid, exploding Medicaid budgets, and so it's been eye-opening, and sometimes things happen, and right now it's like, at the time we've talked about it for years. So been on your show for years. I'm glad you still have the old podcast of our interviews where you sit there and say, "Hey, something's going on down there." Mm-hmm. And we talked about it before we came on the show about it's like right now it's kind of this strange world of you have these fake people that were saying they fought corruption and did all this stuff like that, and they didn't. In fact, maybe we'll talk about somebody who actually did the opposite, and then now says something different. And then you have the ones that are part of the machine that allow this stuff to happen, stopped anything from happening, and now they're the ones that's going to take over and do this. And you have the ones up there that don't have the courage to say anything or challenge anything or do anything, no matter what still comes out. And so, it's just one of those times where, you just sit and look and think, why is this going on, and wondering what the heck's going
on. To set the record straight, you tried to many times pass a Medicaid disclosure bill.
4 times.
4 times. Yeah. Either through the rules process of the Arkansas Legislative Council or actual legislation. And it was eventually rejected. Some, we thought some were going, some got further in the process than others. But I want to highlight, I think it was the first time you tried. Maybe it was the second, but it was in the Arkansas Legislative Council. And you were going to, so that was the second time. You were attempting to essentially bring Medicaid entities in line with other other professions in terms of having to disclose what they do if they're taking money as a result of being in public office. And for some reason, our health care, which is what we spend the most money on, was exempt from this. And so you're in Arkansas Legislative Council, and you're going through this, and you were just wanting the members of the Arkansas Legislative Council to have to disclose. And you got an enormous amount of pushback. And I just want to say that, I think, was the first time that we had clear evidence that people were hiding something. And you were right over the target, because their reaction, they didn't want a voice vote when they voted it down. They made sure they didn't get a voice vote. And matter of fact, specifically at the time, State Representative Nate Bell, in that meeting, Arkansas Legislative Council, because I remember reporting on it, he gave you the most grief, essentially ceding that what you were trying to do was legal, but said it would violate not the Constitution, but the spirit of the Constitution. I've got the transcript actually right in front of me. It says right here, Representative Bell, there's no question that we legally can pass rules that are extra-constitutional, Senator King. My question is, are you in fact attempting to violate the spirit of the Constitution by proposing an ex post facto rule, meaning you were trying to actually make this retroactive, which would have meant, we now know for sure, it would have meant that legislators who were on the take would have had to disclose this to the public. What's your reaction to this, where we are now versus where you were at the end of that table then?
Yeah, and you're right. You're exactly right. It's the first time we have evidence of the cover-up and the obstruction down there. And Nate Bell just, walked in the meeting and, boy, he sure tweets something different now. I mean, that's Nate Bell. And, you can put the transcript out in black and white and clearly see he was the main opposition in that, trying to get something done, which, if it had have got done, would have exposed everything out there. I mean, and if they would have followed the rules, and understand the Legislative Council, we're able to do rules outside of the law. I can't make a law to retroactively go back and make, Paul Harrell, do something tax-wise or something like that. And so that's a good thing, but yet...
But you can make the rule. You can set the rules of the committee to do that.
Yeah, you can set a rule to go back, and that's where I went back, because we saw exploding Medicaid budget. You saw, I don't know how much cronyism going on with votes down there. You had at least, exposure out there of these legislators get personal checks, huge amounts. I mean, David Norsworthy giving Jay Files $80,000, to which we today still have no answer on. Bruce Hawkins giving a supposed loan of $30,000. You're already up to $110,000. You add in the money to Faith and Freedom, to Gilbert Baker that's been exposed, to Michael Lamoureux that was exposed. You're getting up close to, $300,000-$400,000. It's just a few legislators in a few instances. And those things should have been exposed. And you had Nate Bell, obviously, I don't know how he can tweet his way out of this thing, but I'm sure he will, of, how do you oppose something like this that would actually, we would have found out Jeremy Hutchison was getting $500,000.
That's exactly right.
One legislator, one entity, $500,000, but he's innocent. So.
No, you're exactly right. I think it's also an educational experience, just as to how the lengths people will go to hide the truth from the public. This was. Not only do you have, we now know that Jeremy Hutchison was getting $500,000 from Preferred Family Healthcare. Not only do we now know that Preferred Family Healthcare was in the process of bribing multiple legislators, current, former legislators. Not only do we have people in jail now because of it, but if you look back to this moment, if you look back to what you were attempting to do, you knew what was really going on. Because the only reason, Brian, that you would have run a rule change like this is because we all at least suspected that when you have a $2 billion program, influx of cash into the state, and you did it under Republicans who said they would never do it, the only way to get those Republicans to change their positions was to pay them off. And that is a sad. I mean, it's assuming worse motives, but we now know it is the truth. It is exactly what happened since 2013. Brian, are you there? Brian, you broke up. Go ahead. Start over.
Okay. I said you saw exploding Medicaid budgets, not just in the private option, Obamacare, whatever they call it now, but you saw it in other areas too. Long-term care, you saw it in behavioral health, you saw every facet of everything. And once again, it started under Republican. You had Republican supposed, Duncan Baird in chair of joint budget. You've had Lane Jean twice in chair of joint budget, and nothing but exploding Medicaid budgets. And then you had these guys down here. You saw the article in the Democrat Gazette this last time. You could see things of how, they're eventually just, using their things to get money, and there's nobody trying to say anything or stop anything. And when you're the only one down there, well, you get the thing of, well, you're mean and you're a bully and you're, crazy and everything like that. And, it's just, that's what they do. And that's what politics is about, especially with what they're doing down there. And even still today, it's about deception. They'll talk about less spending, that they're saving money by spending less than what they did before. It's about deception. And, unfortunately, there's some people in the media down there that do stuff, and they come out with a few things, but, you look at the personal money ties of this whole thing and how it's not being exposed, and the same people that were allowing it to happen, blocking everything, Jim Hendren, are so all of a sudden in charge of fixing it going forward.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly, that does put it's kind of a doom and gloom perspective, but I mean, I can't tell you that you're wrong, Senator King. I mean, because, you've been proven right in all of this. And you would think that your story, where you were, where the governor did not support your reelection in the primary, he supported your opponent. You would think that would be a big story, considering you've been the one who has attempted to tell everybody about the corruption that's been going down. All these legislators who are now in jail or maybe on their way to jail, and who knows, maybe there's going to be more charges. You would think that would be a giant story of like the one guy who was constantly trying to tell everybody, and he was dismissed. He was told he was mean, and in reality, mean just means that you were bad for their bottom line. Like you were just bad for business. That's what mean means. And but that I don't know why. Like, for example, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Like, why haven't they been keeping a record of all the things that you've been saying? And now here it is, and to me, it would be an amazing story. It's a positive story that there was one guy who was the whole time right, the whole time, and he was told he was wrong, but he ended up being right. You were right.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, you just thought that, no, they've been contacted. They're not going to do a story on that. They're going to protect the establishment down there, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. And we don't have a competing. If we had a Fox News here in Arkansas style, whether you want to say about Fox News conservative deals, but just something presenting the other side or trying to do something, things would flip down there in a matter of days. And it's just, 4 times trying to run it, 4 times it fails, 4 different bills trying to find something, and, all you find is excuses. And, they won't hold. Every once in a while, they'll pop out a story like they did on the loan thing or something like that. But, Roby Brock, how many times did he have? He had Jeremy Hutchinson on probably as many times as any other legislator. Name one episode or anything he questioned him on his involvement in anything. Well rumored. I mean, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of your tax dollars, trying to protect legislative records from the Justice Department, the FBI. No one says nothing. And it is just continual trying to cover it up. down there and help do whatever they can to do that. And, like I said, you have Nate Bell tweeting stuff now that he was some white knight down there, when in reality, he didn't do nothing but try and obstruct it. And a lot of these people tried to help their buddies do it. Now, they may not have been taking personal money, but because of the way the statute works down there, they're trying to help block everything and help do anything for their buddies. No one's going to report on that.
I want to ask you one more question about tax cuts. And listen, I know you've been down there for 12 years, and I know, Brian, just from our conversations, that you are somewhat relieved to be able to take a break. I mean, I know the taxpayers and the people are kind of in dismay, but I know you need to rest. I really do, because that environment down there is just terrible. But I just want to know, when it comes to tax cuts and everybody, the things that, people are talking about, in your opinion, you know what the budget is. You're actually a really good budgeter. You have been down there and you've seen how to make surpluses.
That's why
and
they
things like
attack
that.
you, because no one counters the truth. I mean, just like I said, when they come out with the lie of saying we're saving money, no, that's a lie. Okay, when they come out and say we got this conservative budget that had exploding Medicaid budget, rife with waste, fraud, and abuse and everything like that, no, that's a lie. Okay, that's lies. They're lying.
Well, my question is this: do we have the money? Do we have the money because of the exploding Medicaid budget? Do we have the money for a legitimate tax cut?
Well, you have to look at it like, what are basic government needs to be that people have to have out there that government should supply. The big thing we've talked about before is crime and everything. It's horrible. Little Rock's worse. I heard the radio the other day how they're going to take officers in Little Rock, 4 officers, and pay them overtime to go in high crime areas. Which, why? Number one, they're overworked. When you say overtime and officers in a very high stress job, you're overworking them. Okay, just like a lot of the prison guardians did. They're overworking them. I mean, and so you have this mountain problem in crime that is not being taken care of, and those things have to be addressed first. And if you do, that's going to take a substantial amount of money. And then, of course, the farmer in me looks at the economy. It's going pretty good right now, but it doesn't always go good. I mean, you have to prepare for that. And I've come back from the days, and it's totally a crazy idea. When I came in under Governor Huckabee, when they had $1 billion surplus, you had a joint budget process that actually worked. Okay, these people down there today, they don't even know the difference. I mean, you do sound crazy when they don't even know what it means to have $1 billion surplus. Okay, they're virtually this last year looking at spending every dollar comes in. They're ahead a little bit this year. But, that can change in a matter of months or something like that. I mean, we have a very volatile world today that can change. And so you should be budgeting like this last year with the record amounts of money that come in. You should have been having at least a $250 to $300 million surplus. They had less than $30 million. I mean, so that is not conservative budgeting, to be virtually spending every dollar that comes in. And we have to look at these other areas of, what is it going to take to help solve this crime problem? And, what's the amount of money? And let me go back to this, too, if you want to talk about how it is down there in that world today. Jeremy Hutchison, whatever you want to say about the $500,000, the World Series suite tickets, the indictment, everything like that, he was the go-to guy for the last 5 years on crime and everything like that. Horrible. We're in horrible shape, terrible, worse than ever. Look at the prison situation. Look at the crime problem. Look at everything. Backlog, turning out bad people that have served multiple convictions who are not serving their time, putting more on law enforcement, putting more on unsafe in the communities. All that. Okay, it's horrible, terrible. You know what? If he walked in there today and came up with a crime prison reform bill and all that, they'd all vote for it. I mean, that's how crazy it is. Even though he's been the most complete, that is the most frustrating thing of looking at this thing, is seeing somebody like Jeremy Hudson outside of the $500,000 World Series suite tickets, all this stuff that he has, been named in. His record on the crime part is worse. I mean, it's so bad. People are disappointed in the Razorback season on wins. Jeremy Hutchinson wouldn't even have 2 wins this season if you looked at it. And, it just is very frustrating to get to the point, and somebody like him was, looked upon as the main person, even though the stats and statistics and the real thing that's going on out there was so terrible.
Yeah, I'm going to miss and definitely want to keep in touch, Brian, about the crime situation. But I really appreciate we're out of time. I appreciate you you coming on, setting the record straight.
And put the transcript out of Nate Bell how he actually was an obstructionist and not somebody trying to.
I actually have it right here. I actually have it right here. So we will do that. So I appreciate it, Brian King, Senator Brian King, everybody. We're going to take a break, folks. We got to go right now. Back in a minute. Trolling who comes and who goes. Why is that such a politically incorrect thing today? And because it's one of the most foundational things of civilization, period, is that you have borders and you get to distinguish between who gets to come in, which country you're in, and that sort of thing. So I know that's a really loaded question, but why do you think, especially millennials, are having such a hard time with this?
Well, they have a hard time with it because borders means sovereignty. It means nationhood. It means nationalism. And they're being raised by their left-wing teachers and the left-wing media that nationalism is bad and nationhood is bad, sovereignty is bad, because really if you're a worldwide socialist, a leftist, you don't believe in borders. There's no such thing as nationhood. It's all just one global fraternity. I mean, even a guy like Obama, I don't know that he considers it.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Up against a hard break here. I was just going to mention, a lot of people are talking about China, and they're talking about the trade war kind of may be coming to the beginning of the end. However, China is really upset this morning at the Huawei CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, Wen's Hao Meng. She has been arrested in Canada, and they're threatening to extradite her to the United States. That is not going. Apparently, China's upset about this, but Meng's arrest will immediately heighten tensions between Washington and Beijing just days after. Bloomberg notes the CFO's arrest will be regarded back home as an attack on China's foremost corporate champions. So we'll keep you posted on that, but that's going to throw a wrench into things.
So, as a citizen of the United States, as much as a citizen of the world. So the whole idea of borders, which means each country is sovereign, that it has laws that govern it, not the United Nations, and not the EU, and not the International Court, and not The Hague. This is against leftist thinking, so they don't like it. As far as letting these immigrants in, I assure you that if the people that wanted to come in were a bunch of evangelical Christians or Likudniks, people from the Likud in Israel, you wouldn't see the left clamoring for all of this immigration entry. Really not. They see these people as future welfare recipients, voting Democrat, transforming the country, all part of this multiculturalism, so they're for it. But I don't see any of them really, none of them stood up. You have a genocide against Christians, biblical Christians, all over Africa and the Middle East. I don't see the left clamoring to bring these people in, and they don't seem to be clamoring to. I can tell you one thing, the few Israelis that were Likud types that wanted to come to America during the Obama administration, their passports were not recognized for this reason or that. So it's very selective, very, very selective. But you have to have borders, because if not, jihadists can come in, criminals, MS-13 gang members, people with diseases, people that are mules for drug lords. Some of the millennials, they're not ideological, they're just shallow. And they just think that, hey, there's no problem. There's no problem with anything. And everything always will work out. And they've been taught that Republicans, conservatives, patriots, Americans are mean. That's all. Listen, I just saw an article where 1/5 of the millennials think that the American flag is a symbol of hate.
Gosh. Yeah.
These are our grandchildren. Look how they've been taught.
I like what you said. We're talking with Rabbi Ari Spiro, political analyst. Again, he's author of the book Pushback, Reclaiming the American Judeo-Christian Spirit. You can get it on Amazon. You know, what you said about, well, borders mean sovereignty. You know, and it dawned on me, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to figure this out, but in the same sense, you know, in America, we have what are supposed to be sovereign states that, you know, have different laws, maybe different ways of doing things. And that sort of is true now, but not nearly the way it was. You know, the bigger federal government has essentially, you know, taken a lot of that sovereignty away from the states by giving our own money back to us with strings attached and making sure that we pass the laws that they want. And that's what the left likes. They like that, and that's how they see the world. And so
as we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. That video is actually up at conduitnews.com if you want to check it out. It really is a stark contrast between the dangers of what is going on in China versus some of the economic goals they have here in the United States. And so we're just trying to point out that there's something not right going on when it comes to Arkansas's chief economic development policy involving Chinese companies moving here. I mean, and there's just so little outrage about it. It is just kind of frustrating. Folks, I want to welcome to the program an author. His name is Michael Polera, and Michael has written a book that has to do with, well, here, just let me give you a few headlines, okay? The murder of a CIA agent in an unruly post-Soviet country prompted a Texas attorney to seek answers. Okay, and that Michael Polera joins us now. Michael, how are you, sir?
Good morning, Paul. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, sir. I'm glad that you are here as well, and I really appreciate the stories that I'm reading about your research here. The title of the book, "The Spy Who Was Left Behind: Russia, the United States, and the True Story of the Betrayal and Assassination of a CIA Agent." Can you just kind of start at the beginning and tell us how you got involved in this whole situation?
Sure, Paul. It's Arkansas. I grew up in Searcy, and in my little town, one of the people that I knew was the Woodruff family. Their oldest son, Freddie, had moved there from Oklahoma when he started school at Harding College. He was playing football there. When he came to Harding, the whole family followed. His father was one of my Bible school teachers, his mother the hostess of my school parties. All three of his sisters were in school with me and graduated with me from Harding Academy. At breakfast one morning in 1993, I read about an American who was murdered near Tbilisi and was shocked to see that it was Freddie Woodruff. And it said that Freddie was killed while riding in a car driven by the head of Eduard Shevardnadze's personal protection force, and that Freddie was a CIA operations officer accredited to the Georgian government. All of that was shocking to me. But what I did was I thought, I'll follow the case a little bit, and hopefully I can pick up some extra information because I'm a lawyer. I know how to get a little bit of extra information, and I'll share it with the family, and it'll help them through the process of grief. and I sent off Freedom of Information request, and I did a little bit of investigation. I made a trip to Georgia, which is, tucked away in the Black Sea near Turkey. And what I realized was that the young man convicted of that murder could not possibly have committed the crime. I took all my information to the family. I shared my conclusions, and their response was exactly out of the Good Samaritan. This is terrible. What are we going to do to set this young man free? And so the family of the dead man engaged me to go and get the young man convicted of killing their son and brother out of jail.
Wow. What was his name? The guy that they pinned the death of your friend Mr. Woodruff on. What was his name?
His name was Anzor Sharmaitza. The names are a little difficult. The story's a little bit convoluted because of that. Oh my goodness, what a good story! Because I was able very quickly to prove that he was innocent, but our government, the American government, and the Georgian government didn't want the story to come out, and so they resisted letting him go. And that required that I prove not simply that he was innocent, I had to go and prove who was guilty and why. And that led me from Georgia to Moscow, to Cyprus, to Paris, to Germany, all around the world, literally, looking for the killer and looking for the reasons that someone had hired him to kill Freddie Woodruff.
Wow. And what period of time did this take place?
The murder was in 1993. I intervened in the criminal proceedings in 2004. I successfully got him out of prison in 2008. I continued my efforts to try and reverse his conviction until about 2013, at which point the governmental changes in both Georgia and the United States said there's really no point to try and keep doing this. And so I stopped doing that and started preparing to tell the story.
At what point, this is fascinating, by the way, we're talking with author Michael Polera, also attorney. The book is The Spy Who Was Left Behind, Russia, the United States, and the true story of the betrayal and assassination of a CIA agent. At what point, and did you ever even think that this was going to lead you to Aldrich Ames? And tell us about Aldrich Ames.
Aldrich Ames was a CIA operations officer himself and was probably the worst spy we have ever had inside the United States government. He was highly placed originally in Soviet counterintelligence, and then when the Soviet Union broke up and the CIA was looking for a new enemy to spy upon, they put him in an anti-drug task force focused on the Caucasus, the mountain range where Georgia is located. And he had been in Tbilisi, Georgia, a couple of weeks before the murder and had had a series of angry confrontations with Freddie Woodruff that no one could ever explain. And the story, the book, is the story of what was the purpose of those confrontations and what was the consequence of those confrontations. It was well known that Ames had been in Georgia. And when I got back the Freedom of Information materials from the FBI, it was very clear that there had been two separate investigations. One at the initial shooting, and the second when the FBI arrested Ames about 6 months after Freddie was murdered. And so looking at that, I knew from the beginning that there was an Ames connection. I didn't know what it was. And in working to try and uncover this, I realized that Ames connection was the reason why the U.S. government was hiding the circumstances of Freddie Woodruff's death and his heroism that led to that death.
Wow, it's just absolutely incredible. So, and I've read the articles. I even saw there was one published over in the Democrat Gazette as well about this, about your book, about this trek for the truth. I mean, you really want to expose the truth here, because we're talking about, Mr. Woodruff, who is an Arkansan, and that certainly is what piqued my interest as well. And Mr. Polera, you being an Arkansan as well, is gives you unique insight here on a show that's Arkansas focused. I want to know why this all happened, right? I mean, so Aldrich was arrested 6 months after the death of Mr. Woodruff, the CIA agent. They're both CIA operatives, but so Aldrich Aldrich is a double agent. So did they know, based on your knowledge and research, did they know he was a double agent before he went to Georgia?
Yes, absolutely. After Ames was exposed, it was a savage wound to the American government. And the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence did a very in-depth investigation and had a published report which was available to the public. Of course, there's a secret report that wasn't available. But in the public report, they have a timeline. And prior to the FBI and the CIA making the conscious decision to allow Aldrich Ames to go to Georgia to expose both Woodruff and the other CIA and governmental employees to his evil, the FBI and the Department of Justice had already searched his home and office, wired them both up for sound and video. They were following him 24 hours a day, and the Department of Justice had opened a criminal prosecution against him. The CIA and the State Department had already briefed Bill Clinton on the fact that this man, Aldrich Ames, was a spy for the Soviet Union, and further on for the Russians after the Soviet Union collapsed. It was a known fact, but they made the decision to allow him to go in hopes that he might lead them to other evidence, other conspirators. And as a result, they put a bunch of people in harm's way, and one of them, Freddie Woodruff, figured out that Ames was a spy.
Really?
And since Ames didn't know he'd already been exposed, he sent up a flare to the KGB. And the KGB, knowing CIA culture, knowing Freddie wouldn't put it in writing, wouldn't put it on the telephone because you don't know who's listening or reading, they knew he would wait until he cycled back to CIA headquarters before he exposed what he knew about Ames. This gave them a window of about 3 weeks in which to murder Freddie, and they did. And in the book, one of the things that I do is I talk about sitting down in Moscow with Aldrich Ames' KGB handler, and he and I talked for 2 hours as he tried to explain to me how the KGB could not possibly have been involved in this.
Okay, so just to recap what you said, they allow Aldrich Ames to go to Georgia on this assignment. Now, Freddie Woodruff is just permanently stationed in Georgia. They're hoping that Aldrich is going to lead them somewhere else, and so to another target. At some point, Freddie figures out that Aldrich is a double agent. So then while in Georgia, Aldrich Ames contacts the KGB and says, hey, I got a problem. We've got to kill this guy. And so how did he die? I mean, how did Freddie Woodruff die?
Freddie was riding in the back seat of what would be a small sort of squashed SUV called a Neva 1600. In the back seat, it's a bench seat. You've got an SUV-type hatchback on the back with a fixed glass on the right and the left sides of the passengers, 2 roll-down windows for the 2 front bucket seats. He's sitting in the back seat on the right, and he is shot in the head. The splatter pattern goes from back right to front left, and there's no bullet hole in the car or the glass. The FBI did an investigation. They sent an agent there within 12 to 18 hours after the murder. He inspected the car, and there was no bullet hole. By the time we got to trial against Enzor Sharmaidze, there was a bullet hole in the car, and it was approximately the same height as Freddie's head. And so someone had created this evidence in order to frame Enzor, but it didn't explain the murder. And as a result, what I had to do was to figure out how exactly did the murder happen so that you get a bullet inside the Neva without leaving a mark on the outside of the Neva. The man who was driving was a triple agent, a guy who was originally working for GRU, Russian military intelligence, the same people who have been messing with our elections, if you recall. And he was placed inside KGB to spy on KGB. And then when the Americans came, they tried to bring him into the CIA as an agent. His allegiance was to GRU, and he organized and orchestrated much of what happened in Freddie's life.
Wow. My goodness. Folks, if you're just joining us, we are talking with author Michael Polera. His book, if you want to read more about this, is The Spy Who Was Left Behind, Russia, the United States, and the True Story of the Betrayal and Assassination of a CIA Agent. So, motive. What is the motive? What was the motive of the CIA not wanting to allow the public to know that it was a plot hatched by double agent Aldrich Ames that killed an American CIA agent?
Two things. One was someone looking over the shoulder of the decision to let Ames go there to Georgia in the first place. Second, and more important than that, when Ames is ultimately arrested, the sanction for what he had done as a double agent was the death penalty. It was the leverage that the government had in order to get him to sit down and tell them everything that he had done to support the Soviet Union and the Russians. Ames was responsible for the murders of more than 16 of our agents inside the Eastern Bloc. But if he had been responsible for the death of a colleague, if he had been responsible for killing another CIA officer in order to protect himself from discovery, they would not have been able to negotiate away the death penalty. The demand for it would have been immediate and intense. They wanted to be able to debrief him. They wanted to be able to put him in a prison and be able to go to him anytime they want to and ask him questions. And so in order to have that option, it was essential that they not connect him to Woodruff's murder.
Wow. And you know, in hindsight, just your personal opinion here. I mean, I'm glad that you've gotten to the truth of this. Freddie Woodruff, native Arkansan, you a native Arkansan. But do you think the ends justify the means there in hindsight?
The penalty to Ames wouldn't make Freddie any less dead. And so I judge it not in terms of whether the crime was heinous, but whether or not the benefits were real and able to be attained. I would say that in the battle between the United States and Russia, it was essential to be able to have Ames there. But my thoughts on it are that when you have a war, if the war ends, the prisoners get to go home. The truth gets to be told. And we reach a point in which it is, I think it's appropriate that we eulogize and make myths about our heroes. And Freddie Woodruff is a hero. And therefore, we should be able to stand up and say, this is what really happened, and this man is someone we can be proud of and that our children should emulate.
It's powerful, very powerful. Michael Polera, I really appreciate you coming on the program this morning, sharing this story. Thank you for being someone who wants to get to the bottom and being someone who stands for the truth. And because now we have this great record of this great hero, Freddie Woodruff. Folks, the book is The Spy Who Was Left Behind, Russia, the United States, and the True Story of the Betrayal and Assassination of a CIA Agent. You should get it. It'd make a great Christmas present. Obviously, you can tell it's going to be a great read. Michael, Mr. Polera, thank you so much for coming on, sir.
A great pleasure, Paul. Thank you.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break and wrap up the show this morning, and Conduit News Radio will return in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
As a citizen of the United States as much as a citizen of the world. So the whole idea of borders, which means each country is sovereign, that it has laws that govern it, not the United Nations, and not the EU, and not the International Court, and not The Hague. This is against leftist thinking, so they don't like it. As far as letting these immigrants in, I assure you that if the people that wanted to come in were a bunch of evangelical Christians or Likudniks, people from the Likud in Israel, you wouldn't see the left clamoring for all of this immigration entry. Really not. They see these people as future welfare recipients, voting Democrat, transforming the country, all part of this multiculturalism, so they're for it. But I don't see any of them really, none of them stood up to have a genocide against Christians.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Compelling radio. That was compelling. I'm telling you, the Michael Polera, if you just missed it, it's going to be up at conduitnews.com. But we just interviewed the author of the book. I'm sorry, the author of the book, The Spy Who Was Left Behind. The Spy Who Was Left Behind. Fantastic. Michael Polera grew up in Arkansas, in Searcy, Arkansas. But it's a story about the CIA agent Freddie Woodruff and how he was murdered in Georgia. There was a cover-up about it, though, in order to protect I guess, the questioning of Aldrich Ames, the double agent who was responsible for his death. Anyway, you guys got to go check the interview out. Go check the book out again. It's really, really fascinating stuff. It'll be up at conduitnews.com, and I'm sure to make a great Christmas present. You know what else would make a great Christmas present? Your Conduit News Radio coffee mug or T-shirt or your Marble Palace mug. That would make a great Christmas gift as well. Oh, by the way, did you hear that former congressional candidate, Democrat Chinton Desai, called Republican State Senator Jason Rapert, listen to this, a, quote, effing disgrace. But I'm obviously, using the abbreviated, Old Chinton Desai says that Jason Rapert is an effing disgrace, and it was over a Facebook post talking about Muslim voters. We're out of time, but look that up if you want to, if you're somehow looking for some sort of Facebook, I don't know, get your popcorn, I guess, if you want to be a spectator and something like that. That's certainly something you can do today. Arkansas, thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow. Be safe.